They pulled him over. No sirens, no lights, just the low growl of a sheriff's cruiser drifting behind an old Ford pickup that looked like it had been through a few decades too many. The truck hadn't even reached the gas station yet. It was early, sun not fully up, streets mostly empty, except for the kind of tension that doesn't need a reason to show up. Deputy Ray stepped out first. Wide stance, thumb hooking the belt like it was a badge of honor. Officer Connor followed a step behind, already palming the butt of his flashlight like he was about to need it. There was no call over the radio, no bolo, no reason, just the quiet certainty that the man behind the wheel, black, middle-aged, aviators on, calm, looked out of place in their town. They asked for ID. He handed it over. Elijah Jackson, Georgia license, all valid. They didn't read it, didn't run it, didn't ask any questions. Because the truck was rusted, because the driver looked unbothered, because calm in the wrong skin reads like threat. "Step out," Ray said, voice clipped. No cause, no explanation, just force disguised as routine. Across the street, a few locals inside the diner paused. Forks froze, phones came out, not to defend, just to document. Because something about this scene? It looked familiar. No badge was shown. Just skin tone. Just silence. And somehow, that silence felt too controlled. Too certain. What no one knew was that 3 miles up the highway black SUVs were closing in. That a convoy was moving. That a helicopter was hovering in wait. And by the time it all arrived, this wouldn't be a routine stop anymore. This would be the beginning of the end, for the men who thought they were in charge. So now ask yourself, what happens when the man you cuffed without cause turns out to run the whole damn operation? Who is he? Why didn't he resist? And what was he really here to do? Drop your guesses in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe real power moves quietly, hit that subscribe. Because what's about to unfold, you won't believe how deep it goes. His name was Elijah Jackson. Born in the backwoods of Macon County, Georgia, where mail didn't always show up, but judgment always did. He came into this world between Sunday sermons and broken promises, raised by a war-worn father and a mother who scrubbed office floors until her hands cracked. They didn't teach him to speak loud. They taught him to move right, to keep his head down and his spirit tall. Elijah learned early that silence wasn't weakness. It was control. By 12, he could fix a busted engine. By 16, he knew which teachers watched kids like him and which ones looked through them. And by 20, he stopped needing to prove himself to anybody. He didn't chase credit. He collected results. Quantico didn't just train him. It sharpened him. He led multi-state raids, rewrote federal field procedures, and supervised arrests that made national news, though his name never did. Elijah didn't care. He didn't need to be seen. He needed to see everything. Still, he remembered. The officer who once mocked him now lectures on justice reform. The man who ignored him in a task force briefing teaches at the same law school that denied his niece. Elijah never clapped back. He just kept rising. Quiet, strategic, unmistakable. Meanwhile, Deputy Ray Ransom walks like Macon belongs to him. White, clean, proud jaw. He shakes hands with the mayor, gets free coffee from the diner, and tenses up around anyone who doesn't. Look like the right kind. His partner Connor Hatch mirrors him. Young, eager, easily shaped. Earlier that morning, they waved a white man in a Lexus straight through a checkpoint. Didn't ask for ID. Didn't question the tinted windows. But Elijah? Elijah didn't look like someone who needed to be anywhere important. Have you ever felt misjudged before people even knew who you were? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Deputy Ray adjusted his belt like it meant something. Like the badge clipped to it gave him more than a job, gave him authority over whoever stood in front of him. He didn't ask questions, didn't pause, just stared Elijah Jackson down and muttered, "Folks like you always think the rules don't apply." Low enough to be deniable, loud enough to sting. His partner, Officer Connor, scanned the rusted Ford pickup like it was radioactive. No drugs, no weapons, no urgency. But to them, this wasn't a stop. It was a message. "Pop the hood," Ray ordered, stepping forward. No warrant, no reason. Just a command from a man who expected to be obeyed. Elijah didn't flinch. "I wouldn't do that," he said, voice calm. Even, not rebellious. Just precise. But to Ray, that calm was defiance in disguise. He didn't wait. Ray reached out, yanked the door open with a grunt, and grabbed Elijah by the arm, twisting it behind his back before the man could even finish a breath. "You want to play quiet, fine. We'll make it loud." The cuffs clinked. Elijah winced, but said nothing, did nothing. Across the street, Delaney Wren lowered her coffee, ball cap, faded jeans, subtle. Her thumb tapped her phone twice as she stepped outside. Ray didn't see her, but Elijah did. A flicker of acknowledgement passed through the moment, buried under silence. Inside the diner, George Pender hit record on his flip phone. Leah, the waitress, turned her eyes away. She didn't need more proof, but she knew she was watching it happen. And still, no one moved. Connor kicked the truck's back tire hard. "You're making this worse," he said as he shoved Elijah forward. "Uncooperative," he barked into his radio. It was a lie, but it sounded official now. Carlos Dean stepped out of his barber shop with a broom in hand. He took a step forward, then stopped. One glare from Ray and the man retreated like he hadn't seen a thing. "Man, just let 'em do their thing," he muttered, trying to make it okay, but his voice cracked. Elijah stood upright, shoulders square. The cuffs bit into his wrists, but he stayed steady. And then, with perfect stillness, he spoke. "You might want to double-check what you're escalating." The words didn't come like a warning. They came like evidence. Connor turned to Ray, just for a second. Because even without knowing why, they both felt it. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. What would you do if someone challenged you publicly based only on assumption? Drop your response in the comments. And if this moment gave you chills, don't forget to like and subscribe. Ray yanked the cuffs tighter, sharp, deliberate. "You were warned," he spat, before shoving Elijah hard against the hood of the truck. The metal rang out beneath him like a bell. "This is my town, and in my town, you cooperate." His breath hitched with control masked as pride. Connor stood beside him, nodding in rhythm, more actor than officer. It wasn't protocol, it was performance. For the cameras, for the onlookers, for themselves. Inside the diner, forks hovered mid-air. Conversations fell flat. The woman by the window instinctively pulled her daughter closer. Even the jukebox cut off mid-song, like the place itself refused to score what was happening. Still, no one moved, but everyone watched. "I've done nothing wrong," Elijah said. Not to Ray, to the moment. His voice wasn't defensive. It was documentation. A statement for every phone recording. A record for whoever would hear this later. He didn't resist. He remembered. And in his back pocket? A device pinged once. Then again. Barely a twitch of his cuffed finger. It was all it took. 5 miles out, 2 black SUVs adjusted course. "I swear I've seen him before," Janine Clark whispered, pressed against the glass. "Senate hearing, maybe? Or a DOJ photo? Something federal?" No one responded, but the doubt had been seeded. Connor stepped closer. "Still not talking?" He slammed the truck's tailgate and smacked Elijah's ball cap clean off his head. "You want to act slick? You'll ride in silence." The hat rolled into the gutter. Elijah didn't look down. Bo Ellis muttered from his stool, "Should have just done what they said." But outside, Delaney Wren didn't blink. Arms crossed, earpiece hidden under her cap, she stared at Ray like she already knew how this ended. Lines were being drawn. Quietly. Elijah turned toward Ray, eyes still unreadable. No panic. No plea. Just the kind of silence that makes people nervous. Then, from the diner's side door, Micah, barely 17, apron still on, slipped outside. "You good, man?" he whispered. Ray barked instantly, "Back inside." But Micah didn't flinch. Elijah shifted slightly. His shirt rose just an inch, just enough for Connor to catch a faint black metal clip along his waistband. 3 letters. USM. Connor blinked, but said nothing. Ray stormed back, snatched Elijah by the collar. "I don't care who you think you are," he hissed, then shoved him into the cruiser and slammed the door shut. The echo spread like a closing vault. In Elijah's pocket, a green light blinked twice. Across the street, Wren tapped her earpiece. Once. Clint Miller smirked from the bench. "Shouldn't have been rolling that junker through here like he owns it." A few chuckles. Dry. Dismissive. Inside the gas station, Eileen shook her head. "Always a scene with those types." Fred didn't even look up. "Play stupid, win stupid." Elijah leaned forward, ready to speak. Ray slammed the door again. "Save it." He walked off like he'd delivered justice. Micah slipped back, inside the diner. "I think he's someone," he said quietly to Wren. "For real." Wren gave a single nod. Ray turned toward Micah. "You want to interfere? You can ride too." Ugly. Loud. A threat with no teeth, just spit. An ambulance rolled slowly past, slowed at the scene, then moved on. Didn't stop, didn't check, just like always. What would you do if you were in Elijah's place? Would you speak now, or wait for the moment that truly matters? Tell us in the comments. Ray came back like a man trying to make a point, with too much heat, too little control. He ripped the cruiser door open, reached in, and yanked Elijah out by the shoulder with the kind of force that wasn't about compliance. It was about dominance. "You think you're some kind of martyr?" he hissed, before shoving Elijah forward. Hard enough to make him stumble. The cuffs clanked against metal, cold steel on hot morning air. That sound, sharp and final, rang out across the block like a warning shot. And just like that, half the street went silent. "He's escalating it," Ray called out loudly to no one and everyone. "Playing the victim now." He didn't need support. He just needed someone to echo him. Clint Miller, standing beside the ice machine, nodded without thinking. No logic, just muscle memory. The crowd wasn't analyzing anymore. They were absorbing, letting perception replace truth. Elijah steadied himself, straightened. His voice came low, calm, but heavy with intent. "All I've ever asked for is fairness." Micah caught it, camera still running. That one sentence would travel far beyond Macon. Then Elijah turned. Slowly. Took a step toward the diner. The crowd murmured, confused. Was he leaving? Giving up? But at the door he stopped, turned back and walked. Walked, straight to Ray. Face to face. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. His presence said it all. "You still have no idea who I am." "Don't ignore me," Ray snapped, his voice cracking as the image of control finally slipped. He raised his hand and slapped Elijah across the back of the head. The sound hit like a gunshot. Gasps. Phones flew up. "That's too far," Janine Clark said from her window booth, rising halfway out of her seat. "Did he just—" Chairs scraped. Conversations froze. The bystanders? Now they were witnesses. Elijah didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just turned and looked at Ray, deep, level and unshaken. "You just made a mistake," he said. "A public one." And for the first time since this began, Ray looked nervous. Connor moved in fast, grabbed Elijah's arm, yanked him toward the cruiser again, hard enough to be noticed. Ray didn't stop him, because now they were both in too deep to walk it back. What do you think Elijah should do next? Keep his silence, or let the truth drop right here, in front of everyone? Comment below. And if this chapter made your chest tighten, hit like and subscribe. Elijah shifted his weight, calmly adjusting the stance of a man who'd stood in storms far worse than this. The cuffs still circled his wrists, but nothing about him looked confined. He looked at Connor first, then Ray. Eyes steady, voice low. "I've tolerated enough." There was no bark in his tone, no plead. Just that measured clarity, the kind that didn't ask for justice, it declared it. The street didn't just pause, it tightened, like something ancient had just turned its head. Ray's chest puffed, but the air didn't carry him the same anymore. "You're the one acting out," he shouted too fast, too loud. "This could have been over an hour ago." But it didn't sound like command anymore. It sounded like panic trying to disguise itself. And panic never holds. Phones were up now, not one or two. Nearly everyone. George, Leah, Carlos, people who'd stepped back earlier were leaning in now, camera lights glowing like digital torches. The scene had flipped. The public wasn't watching Elijah anymore. They were watching the officers. And still, Elijah said nothing more. He just tapped the sole of his boot against the pavement. Once, twice, 3 times. The move was quiet, precise, unremarkable to the blind eye, but not to what it triggered. A silent ping bounced between 4 cell towers. The convoy, 5 miles, out, adjusted course. He slipped something into Micah's hand, a small folded piece of paper. "Give this to her," he said. Micah nodded and crossed the street without hesitation. Delaney Wren took it, read it once, and immediately stepped off the curb, heading toward the intersection like she knew her cue had been called. Ray noticed too late. "What are you passing notes for?" he snapped, trying to sound casual, but the edge in his voice betrayed him. Connor's hand instinctively moved back to his belt. Neither of them liked what they couldn't name. Leah stepped forward then, cutting through the tension like someone who'd just picked a side. She handed Elijah a glass of water. "Hot morning," she said. Her voice didn't shake. The live stream camera inside her apron blinked red. This wasn't kindness. This was witnessing. Elijah turned not toward the cops, but toward the crowd. This was never about a truck. He let it hang there. Let it breathe. It's about what people think they're entitled to do when no one's watching. Now? They were all watching, Connor muttered under his breath. "This is why you people—" Ray spun toward him. "Shut up!" But it was already too late. Connor's body mic was live. Every word recorded, streaming, and then silence. Not the comfortable kind. The loaded kind. Even the traffic behind the cruiser began to slow, as if it didn't want to interrupt what was unfolding. Elijah turned back to Ray. Calm as ever. "You overlooked one thing," he said. "Everything you've done here today is admissible." It wasn't a threat. It was the beginning of the record. What would you do in this situation? Would you hold your ground or let the system correct itself? Tell us below. And if this chapter hit something deep, like and subscribe. Across the block, the air dropped like glass shattering in reverse, suspended in perfect, dangerous stillness. Kevin, the delivery guy, froze with a pizza box hanging mid-air. He didn't blink. A kid on a neon green bike coasted to a full stop, foot hovering over the ground like the very laws of motion had been paused. A mother inside the diner gripped her coffee cup so tight the lid cracked. Even the wind, which had been rustling the flags over the gas station, now held its breath. Every single pair of eyes, customers, cashiers, bystanders, passers-by, locked on Elijah Jackson. And Elijah didn't move. Delaney Wren did. Just a few steps. Just enough. She shifted subtly in front of Elijah, not beside him, body angled now, blocking the camera view from certain angles. Her hand moved behind her back. The sun caught the glint of something silver. Not a weapon, not a phone, an earpiece. Just enough to flash, if you knew what to look for. Inside the diner, Dev Banks, a local freelancer who'd been filming the crowd on a whim, stepped out and tilted his camera. But now, it was aimed directly at the officers. This wasn't by chance anymore. This was choreography. Elijah stayed, silent. Reached into his shirt pocket, not fast, not slow, and pulled out something worn. Leather. Folded. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He set it face down on the hood of the cruiser, right between the badge numbers stenciled on the metal. The gold trim along the edge shimmered just enough to make Carlos Dean, who'd been watching from the barber shop, suddenly rise from his seat. Ray's voice cracked as he stepped forward. "What are you doing?" His hands twitched, then stopped themselves. He looked at the badge, didn't touch it, didn't speak again, because some part of him already knew whatever was under that flap changed everything. Elijah didn't look at him, didn't look at anyone, just let his eyes sweep the street. Not defiant, not smug, just present. "You'll understand soon enough," he said. And it wasn't a warning, it was a promise. If you think this story just turned a corner, hit like and subscribe. He hasn't raised his voice once. Leah's voice broke the stillness from behind the diner's counter. She wasn't talking to anyone in particular, but the words hung heavy in the air. George, sitting near the window, added under his breath, "He doesn't need to. You ever seen anyone that calm wearing cuffs?" That was the moment when judgment turned to curiosity. The crowd, once convinced of guilt, began to lean forward, not in accusation, but in doubt. Delaney Wren stepped up beside Elijah and placed a phone into his open palm. No announcement, no explanation. Just the smooth handoff of something that hummed with authority. The screen lit up instantly. Incoming, Director Reese, Federal Ops Channel, encrypted. Connor blinked. The badge, the silence, the earpiece. It was all starting to click, but too late for comfort. Elijah turned the screen outward. The crowd saw a paused video, an official government task force meeting. In the center of the table, commanding the room in full tactical voice, Elijah Jackson, suited, leading. Federal agents flanked him. Ray's lips parted like he was about to speak, but nothing came out. Around them, gasps turned into murmurs. Disbelief spiraled into shock. And then, the cavalry arrived. 3 black SUVs glided onto Main Street like ghosts with engines. Doors opened in synchronized motion. From the first vehicle stepped Special Agent Kayla Durant. Tailored suit, glowing earpiece. Her gaze scanned the block and landed squarely, where it needed to. "Where is Marshal Jackson?" she asked, voice crisp. The word, Marshal, knocked the breath out of the street. "This man is Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal Elijah Jackson," Agent Durant said loud enough for every phone and bystander to hear. "He was en route to oversee today's coordinated takedown of a multi-state trafficking ring. You just delayed a federal operation." Phones everywhere were up now, not for spectacle, but for truth. "I knew I recognized him," Janine whispered, stunned. The pieces finally fit. Silence turned to understanding, and for some, shame. Elijah stepped forward, his calm unshaken. "I've been running this operation for 16 months, but today, I let people show me who they really are when they think they're in control." Ray's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't. No, he didn't say. But the silence wasn't shielding him anymore. It was watching him unravel. All department activities are now paused, Durant said to Ray and Connor. Your access to communications and data systems is revoked, pending federal review. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a takedown. Elijah said nothing more, just stepped aside. The conversation? Over. 2 more agents emerged carrying black locked cases marked confidential, seized evidence. They didn't glance at Ray. They walked straight to Elijah. You never asked who I was, Elijah said, turning. You assumed I had no power because I didn't show it. Ray looked smaller, diminished by the truth. Not because it was loud, but because it was undeniable. There was no applause, just a few soft claps. Then stillness, respect, not performance. You acted out of bias, Elijah added. Not duty. That's what you'll answer for. Connor stepped back. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Ray was alone now. He inched toward the cruiser door. Subtle, pitiful. But Durant's voice stopped him cold. Remain where you are. You are now subject to federal internal review. Immediate compliance is required. Then came the final blow. Your position, she said, is terminated, effective immediately. A second agent added, You'll report to federal oversight pending misconduct charges. You'll be informed when to appear. Ray's voice cracked. This wasn't personal, but no one offered sympathy. Not one. Elijah didn't blink. It became personal the second you put your hands on me for nothing. Then he turned to the crowd. To those who stayed quiet, but kept watching. I thank you. Silence is heavy, but not always empty. He looked to Micah, nodded once. Micah nodded back. No words, just wait. And then, as Elijah walked toward the waiting SUV, the diner's television flickered behind the counter. A breaking news alert scrolled across the screen. Chief U.S. Marshal Jackson leads federal takedown across 3 southern states. Dev, the camera operator, stiffened. Reality settled in. The town finally understood who they had touched. Should Deputy Ray be forgiven, or should he face the full consequences of his assumptions? Tell us in the comments, and if this moment felt earned, like and subscribe. As Elijah Jackson prepared to leave town, a man stepped quietly from the diner doorway. Older, slow-moving, hat in hand. I've never seen someone win without raising their voice, he said, not in awe, in respect. It wasn't the volume people remembered. It was the way truth held its own. The footage spread fast, but not because it was loud. It went viral because it was precise, controlled. Every frame showed a man who never flinched, never flexed, just stood. And in standing, shook the ground under everyone else. When asked to speak later, Elijah kept it short. Power isn't volume, it's vision. Then he turned to a group of young men standing off to the side. Boys who looked like him, dressed like him, overlooked like he once was. If they don't see your worth, he told them, don't chase it. Stay still. When it matters, they will. Weeks passed. Elijah returned once, to that same gas station where it all started. Same truck, same boots. This time, the man who once ignored him at the register met him at the door. Welcome, sir. Same place. But the posture? Completely different. Miles away, in a quiet auditorium, Ray Ransom sat in the back. Not in uniform, not speaking. Just listening. No speech. No apology. But sometimes presence is a beginning. And somewhere deeper still, beyond headlines, beyond views, Elijah stepped into a secure federal room. Inside, a sealed folder. The label read, Initiate Phase 2, National Oversight. Because what seemed like an ending was only the beginning of his next chapter. And as Elijah walked out, Someone asked what legacy meant to him. He smiled, just slightly. Legacy isn't in the noise you make. It's in the silence they remember you by. If you loved this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity is for everyone, not just the powerful. And in the comments, tell us, should Ray be forgiven? Or should he face the full consequences? Let us know below.